The United Nations currently recognizes a total of 180 currencies around the world as being valid legal tender. In modern times, currencies have suffered huge losses, invariably due to hyperinflation in a country. Think of prices out of control and lots of zeros and banknotes. I'm Jake the Voice Parr, and these are 10 of the worst currency devaluations ever. We commence our countdown at number 10 by being at war. Hyperinflation and the allied devaluation of a country's currency often occur during times of war or even in the aftermath thereof. And that is what happened to Taiwan in 1949 with its old Taiwan dollar. The small island had just come out of the Chinese Civil War and the nationalist Kuomintang forces have seized power in Taiwan. War had destroyed Taiwan's economy, and by 1949, inflation was at 399%, and notes of the value of 100,000 were in circulation. The worthless currency was replaced by the new Taiwan dollar. The old Taiwan dollar quickly became a relic. Argentina is the country we turn to at number 9. It has had its fair share of hyperinflation and worthless currencies. Argentina had begun to suffer from extreme inflation in the late 1970s due to corruption and the mismanagement of international loans by the brutal right-wing dictator known as the Junta. By 1981, extreme inflation had entered into hyperinflation, and the government was issuing banknotes to the value of 1 million pesos. Small wonder that the junta tried to divert public attention away from the huge economic crisis by invading the nearby British Falkland Islands in 1982 and losing. What is remarkable about our country at number 8 is not that it suffered from hyperinflation and a devalued currency, but that it suffered from hyperinflation for 14 years and that it had multiple devalued currencies. That country was Brazil between 1980 and 1994. It was a time when annual inflation was consistently at either 3 or 4-digit numbers and in which the country changed currencies like underwear. Brazilian currencies during those years included the Cruzado, Cruzado Nuo, Cruzado Novo, Cruzeiro, and Cruzeiro Real. The miracle is that Brazil ever got out of that mess in the first place. We stay in Latin America at number 7 as we turn south of the border to Mexico. It was Mexico in 1982 that was the first of many Latin American and African countries that defaulted on international loans known as sovereign debt during the 1980s. Overspending on social programs and low oil prices were blamed for enormous public debt and an inflation rate that reached 10,000% at its height. Mexico's economy was in freefall, and the country was so close to bankruptcy that the Mexican government was forced to temporarily nationalize all private banks in September 1982. Pancho Villa would have not been proud. Poland is at number 6, and it had barely become a newly independent country before being hit by the ravages of hyperinflation. Poland had regained its independence in 1918 in the aftermath of the First World War, yet it had needed to finance a costly war waged against Bolshevik Russia, and its economy suffered. By 1923, inflation had accelerated dramatically and the Polish mark plummeted in response to the collapse of the German mark. By May 31st, 1923, the exchange rate was 52,875 Polish marks to the US dollar. The poor Poles couldn't seem to catch a break in their early years of independence. War rears its ugly head again at number 5 with the devaluation of the Greek drachma towards the end of the Second World War. Greece had been occupied by the Nazis and their economy had been suffering for some time. However, things got out of control when the Greek government in exile regained control of Athens in October 1944. Prices rose by 13,800% in that month and another 1,600% in November as the costs of war took their toll. Prices were doubling every 4 days by the end of 1944. It was indeed a Greek tragedy. Probably the most famous case ever of a country suffering the horrors of hyperinflation is that of the Weimar Republic in the 1920s, coming in at number 4 on the countdown. Germany had been defeated in the First World War and been humiliated and crushed by the Treaty of Versailles. The enormous costs of reparations devastated the economy of the new Weimar Republic. By 1923, hyperinflation was at 29,500%. A 5 million mark coin worth $714.29 in January 1913 was worth 1,000th of 1 cent by October 1923. No wonder Germans took to using their currency as wallpaper or making kites out of it. A country in near collapse with a currency in near total collapse is our number 3. That country was Yugoslavia, which was beset by hyperinflation and a near worthless currency, the dinar. This was all due to the breakout of the Yugoslav Wars, the breakup of the Yugoslav state, which has always been precarious, and general destabilization in the region by the early 1990s. United Nations sanctions were also devastating the country. Things came to a head in 1993 with an inflation rate of 1,000,000% a month and the release of 500 billion dinar banknotes. It was the beginning of the end for Yugoslavia. Imagine living in a country where the monthly inflation rate had hit 79 billion%. That is what the people of Zimbabwe had to endure in November 2008, and that is why Zimbabwe is at number 2 on this tragic countdown. Once an African success story that changed when its dictator, President Robert Mugabe, launched attacks in 2000 on property laws in the country. Within a few years, the country was in economic meltdown and banknotes of $100 trillion were in circulation. No wonder the South African rand and the US dollar became the de facto currencies of Zimbabwe, which remains in poor economic shape. Number 1 on our countdown remains to date the worst case of hyperinflation and a devalued currency ever suffered by a country. It was just a year after the end of World War II, and the small Central European country of Hungary had been devastated by the war. By 1946, a 100 quintillion Hungarian pengo banknote was in print. Daily inflation was at 195%, which meant prices doubled every 15.6 hours. It is estimated that when the currency was replaced in August 1946, that the total of all Hungarian banknotes in circulation equated the value of just 1,000th of $1. Try and imagine that. Those then are 10 of the worst currency devaluations ever. For more top lists just like this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Don't forget to check out our other top lists. Thank you very much for watching, and thanks for learning.